Hey everybody, my name is Paul Eston Jr., aka Boy Green, and New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25. We got a very special guest joining us on today's show. This is our New York Jets NFL Draft edition of the show. We're also going to have a generic NFL Draft show on the channel tomorrow. We'll sprinkle in some Jets as well, but some great Jets draft show stuff as we get ready for the 2021 NFL Draft. And joining me on this YouTube show is Greg Armstrong. You can follow him at Greg Armstrong _. He is, of course, with TurnOnTheJets.com. He's been a staple there for a long time, and he was a key component of this, the Badlands New York Jets draft guide. Look at that, baby. As soon as Connor Rogers had this up, and Joe Caparosa, wonderful folks at Badlands, the best New York Jets subscription podcast on the planet, they put the PDF out there. I'm like, a PDF schmedf. I'm printing this baby out, printed it out. It's right here. And as I introduce my guest, Greg Armstrong, I can't help but notice, get the old glasses here. I'm like Billy Shakespeare over here. Greg Armstrong, you are prominently named in this Connor Rogers letter to the fans before it starts. So first off, let's welcome you in. Greg, thanks for taking the time. And man, how does it feel to get that kind of shout out from the Connor Rogers?
Yeah, man. I mean, first off, thanks for having me on. Just a couple of Central New York guys talking some Jets football. It was crazy, man. Like the way it kind of happened was kind of surreal. I mean, Connor and I, we've grown to have a really good friendship over the last couple of years, even outside of football. We were just talking one night, and he kind of asked me. He's like, "Hey, is the draft something you want to do?" And, I've always kind of like dabbled in it, I've always wanted to go like all in on it, but with time and with work, you start out strong. And then when you get to like March, it kind of just wanes away. And then by the time you're ready to pick it back up, it's like, well, I'm already so far behind and it's too overwhelming. So when he said like, yeah, like, I'm probably going to need some help on this with the later round guys, I jumped at it. I was like, I mean, you get to work with Connor, who's, the best in the business for my money on this kind of stuff. Doing anything I had to, right? Like it's looking at the day 3 prospects. Some guys might get drafted. Some guys might not get drafted. Just going through the whole process. And that was really the most exciting thing for me, was just not even so, it's really awesome. And it's a blessing to, be mentioned as a thank you on the draft guide that, with Connor and Joe. But just to learn the process from someone who does it for a living, because it really shows, it's a humbling experience, because you think a lot about football, and you think a lot about what you're looking at, and we're kind of in the same boat. We watch as much football as we can, but then you really sit down with a guy like Connor who does this for a living, and you're like, holy hell, man, like I don't know nearly as much stuff as I thought I did. But just getting to pick his brain on stuff and learning from him about everything that goes into scouting and scouting different positions. It was truly a blessing. And, the draft guide came out way better than I could have ever imagined for our first run.
And you mentioned first run. This is Connor Rogers, and he's been doing this a long time, and he really worked his way up the ladder. And for those who don't know, same thing. Me and Connor became friends, and we were talking football and non-football stuff, and knew him. And I think we could both say this: we knew him, or at least I can. I knew him before he got big. He was just some producer for Bleacher Report. Then all of a sudden, man, he earned his way up, and it's crazy to see him now. And I got to give since this is kind of about Connor Rogers and Badlands and everything anyway. I mean, I got to give a shout out. SNY, are you kidding me? Connor Rogers is going to be part of the Jets SNY coverage, so shout out to him. Of course, he's going to be the #1 guy as part of their Bleacher Report draft coverage. They're going to have Akeem Talib, Reggie Wayne, so many great people, and of course Adam Lefkoe as part of the Bleacher Report coverage, and then still Badlands. So first off, I don't know how he has that much time in the day, quite frankly, but shout out to Connor Rogers for that. And one of the things that stood out to me about this, so again, Connor Rogers is the first draft guide he's ever put out, like Jet-centric, not a Bleacher Report thing. It's a purely TOJ Badlands exclusive thing that he put together. And I hope this is the first of many, and I truly believe it will be for Connor Rogers and the folks over at Badlands. But the thing that intrigued me is they had you on for an episode right after. It's actually, and you've got to keep pounding your chest for this, the longest Badlands episode to date, featuring yours truly, Greg Armstrong, on the show. And one of the things that got me is what you just talked about. is that you think you know. We all think, oh man, I'm a football guy. I got a YouTube show, got a radio show. Man, I know football. And then you got to sit down with Connor Rogers and do these Zoom calls late at night. You could go into detail about this because it's fascinating. And one of the things you mentioned on the podcast about it on the feed is the intricacies. As Connor Rogers pointed out a few things, you're like, oh my goodness, I would have never looked at that on my own. What are some of those intricacies? Take us down a path, whether it's a pass rush or running back, whatever it is, and get us into the nitty gritty. What kind of scouting tips was Connor Rogers giving you as you dove in on this Badland Guide?
So we initially started off with running backs, and running back in and of itself, if you're just scouting the actual player, it's pretty cut and dry, right? Like, can you get upfield? Do you have good vision? Do you have good contact balance and all that stuff? When you get into it, there's so many other things that go into why or why not a play works, right? And, maybe he gets stopped for a 2-yard loss. And, some people who, watch it casually are like, okay, like that's just not a good play. Well, you got to look at, okay, what's the offensive lineman's assignments? What's the defense? What are they in? What are their assignments on that individual play? Did he misread a blocking lane or a running lane? Did the safety come down and did he not see him? Was it the quarterback's fault for not changing a protection at the line of scrimmage? There's just, on the surface level, you look at it, it's like, okay, this is a 3-yard gain. He does this, he does this. And then you get into it and we spend a lot of time watching just the same play over and over and over again and picking up on different things as to why or why not this play didn't work. Yeah, man, the Zoom calls, they were a really fun time. I think the most fun that I had, we would try to schedule them, and Connor, as busy as he is, the Zoom calls, I would take it whatever chance that I get, right? It's one of those things where, he's super busy. He's like, hey, I got an hour here. It's like, cool, I'll clear my schedule. Let's get on. Let's do this. I remember it was a Saturday night, and I think it was at like 10:30. He texted me. He's like, you up? I was like, yeah. He's like, you want to watch the Tulane kids, the Johnson and Sample? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So, we were on Zoom at 11 to, 12:30, having a couple of cold ones and just watching some prospects and just talking, right? Like it's one thing to just talk strictly about football for an hour and a half. But it's different when I get to pick his brain, right? Because if you go into this thinking a lot of stuff and everything, you're going to fail. It's the same way with everything, or every profession or activity that you do. But with this stuff, it's okay to be wrong on things, to say like, hey, I don't understand why this is the way it is. And can you explain, why this play worked, or why that guy is doing this on a certain play? And while, especially with Twitter too, like it's really easy to find people who point out those things on Twitter, right? With all the video breakdowns and all this other stuff that's on Twitter and readily available for a lot of the people. But to get to sit down and ask actual questions and ask very specific questions about stuff, that to me was the most fun part about all of this whole thing.
Well, and to what you said, I guess the "you up" text has a whole new different meaning when Connor Rogers is sending that for a Zoom chat. So you up, hell yeah, let's find a way. No kind of technical booty call here. But let me ask you this: if you can even remember, do you know how many Zoom, I say interviews, but like these meetings, these like Zoom film breakdowns, how many of them, if you had to try to guess, or if you know the number, did you do with Connor Rogers for this Badlands Draft Guide?
I think we did like 4 or 5, and they were each probably around like an hour to longer.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
So the process really was like, we first started, and our original plan was we would watch a position. He'd give me some guys on the back end to watch. We would reconvene and then, go over, kind of stack them the way we wanted to, see who we wanted to put into the guide over Zoom, move on to the next position. As you know, Connor, being the very busy man that he is, that plan kind of faded very quickly with all of his obligations and whatnot. So what it turned into was he would give me a position. I would watch it. I would send him the write-ups that I did. And then we would kind of talk through, like, did I write this right? Is this the correct kind of terminology? Am I seeing, is this wrong? Am I just looking at this a completely wrong way? But yeah, it was like 4 or 5 hour plus long Zoom calls, and it was fun, man. It was a lot of fun.
All right, 1 or 2 last nuggets on this, and we'll move into some Jets draft questions. Just going to throw them at you. Connor mentioned it during the Badlands episode, and I think you may have as well, is that you guys did a lot of work that didn't even make the final cut. They say movies are like 4 hours long, and then they're like slice this, dice this, boom this, and then all of a sudden you got a 2-hour piece. How much of the work did you put in that just never even made it to the cutting room floor?
There's a couple running backs and a couple of edge guys that I watched, and just to get a second pair of eyes on for Connor. And then when we reconvened and we kind of talked through it, we were just like, yeah, man, like this, because it's a Jet-centric guide, and I think that's the allure of this. Outside of Connor, who wrote the majority of it, and that he does great work. It's really the first Jet-centric draft guide that I've seen. There's tons of draft guides. A lot of people have draft guides now, but if you're looking at it from a team specific kind of thing, it's really tough to pigeonhole the players who are the right fits at this spot. It's like, who should I keep an eye on in the 3rd and 4th rounds? And with this, like, we wanted to, in Connor's overall vision of it, Connor and Joe, we want to make it as Jet-centric as possible. So if we were looking at guys, I'll give you one. Khalil Herbert, for example, the running back from Virginia Tech. He was one of the guys he had me watch. And, I watched him, and then we reconvened, and we decided, like, he's a fine player. But, like, for the Jets, like, it doesn't make that much sense to put him in there. And, some people might look at it as wasted work that didn't get into the guide. But to me, like I said earlier, just the process, the experience, like just going through all of that stuff, like it was definitely, worth it. And moving forward too, like, for people who want to do their own draft guides and, say you're, pick an NFL team, you want to do your own draft guide that's team centric. Those are some decisions you're going to have to make. Like, there's so many players. There's only a select few that you can put into the guide without it turning into one of those other guides with the 300 prospects, all the breakdowns and that stuff. So we had to make some cuts, but it was a couple of edge guys and a couple of running backs that really came down to it that we were just like, yeah, like, and it wasn't like we stacked them. So it wasn't like we watched them and we watched a ton of them and then just got rid of a bunch of them. It was, all right, who's the best fit for this draft guide? Who are the guys that people are going to get excited about? People are the names that they should know that are most likely to get drafted by the Jets. And then we just kind of made our list that way.
And Greg, I think you nailed it right there. So, for instance, I have this random draft guide right here in front of me. This isn't the Badlands one. This is just a random one. This has 300 prospects. Look at all this. This is a dictionary of information. It's great. It's great. There's a lot of information there. But I agree with you. The allure of this specific Badlands Jets draft guide. There you go. You guys can take another peek. If you really want I'm not going to reveal the whole thing. You want it? Hey, subscribe to Badlands. Okay. You can do it on Patreon.com/TOJ Badlands. Go do it yourself. Go look it up. It's phenomenal. There's another peek for you guys out there. But the allure to me is the Jets, is the scheme fits, is all the intricacies of this guide. Again, it's terrific. It is a must-have, quite frankly, for any New York Jets fan out there. I've got my notebook by me. I'm going to have this. I'm going to have a lot of stuff in front of me as I'm watching NFL Draft. And as soon as players get selected, all I have to do is go lick the finger, go right over to whoever picks, and boom, Connor Rogers, Greg Armstrong, Joe Caparozzo, all the love there from the guide. So go get the guide. I'll also have the link down here in the YouTube description down below as well for you guys to jump on, again, Badlands. And again, I also mentioned one more plug here, and then we'll get some other Jets draft questions. They say Badlands feed. People say Badlands podcast all the time. The podcast is great, but it's not just podcast. There's the draft guide. There's the live streams. There's the articles. There's the little bit of everything, quite frankly. And that's why you should. There's 2 different tiers, $3, $5. Go check it out. Make your own life decisions. But I'm just going to tell you the link's down there. You can do what you want with it. I'm not going to force you to click it. I'm not some sort of dictator, but the link's down there and you can click and explore if you'd like. Greg, before we get you out of here, let's go through a couple of Jets draft topics this week. And one of them, Tony Pauline of the Pro Football Network reported that the Jets don't count them out, quote unquote, on a running back. And I know that how this is going to make you feel immediately because I've heard you around the block on this, but the Jets have, of course, the 23rd pick, thanks to Seattle, and the 34th overall pick in the second round. And again, Tony Pauline's report, which don't be surprised. Don't count them out if the Jets take a running back at one of those two spots. And basically his rationale is, of course, that the Jets value the top three running backs, and they think they're plug-and-play guys. Everyone else in the class is kind of meh. And according to everything you and Connor put into the guide, that's basically the same kind of take there. If the Jets were to do it at 23 or 34, what would your reaction be?
I'd be disappointed. It's – and that's not to discredit, Najee Harris or Travis Etienne or even Javonte Williams for that matter. I think Williams is a step below Harris and Etienne, but three really, really good running backs. And, yeah, I mean, will they be plug-and-play guys? I could see that for all three of them. The 23rd and 34th pick, they just have too many needs. And like the offensive line needs a lot of work. It would be foolish to – with how much work the offensive line needs. And you don't want to make the same mistake you did with Sam and not put the guys around him like that to protect him. It would just be foolish to not, go after an offensive lineman. And the cornerback room, I mean, it's atrocious right now. You can't go into week one with the cornerbacks that they have right now. And, even edge, like signing Carl Lawson, it's a great move. And the rotation that they have on the defensive line is really, really good. However, for a team that's been starting for an edge rusher for this long, if you just sign Lawson and like, you know what, we've done all we can do. That's it. That's our edge guy. Like, it just seems it would be a poor way of going about things. So running back, like, yeah, would it be fun to have an ETN or a Najee Harris for your 2 overall pick, Zach Wilson? Absolutely. There are just more pressing needs than that right now. I will say, and this is the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand. The draft, like, it's just a crapshoot, right? Every year we try to plug these guys in, and you can do it for the first 2, 3, maybe 4 picks in any given year. We don't know what these other teams in the first round are doing. We don't know how the board is going to break. There might not be an offensive line that they deem worthy enough to give a first round pick to. The edges might be gone. There might not be the cornerbacks that, a Surtain or a J.C. Horn there. The edge rushers might not be there where you want to give a first-round pick to one of those lower-level guys. We don't know how the board's going to break. I will say right now, on the day that we were recording, if they end up with a running back with one of those 2 picks, I'm going to be very, very disappointed.
I'll follow up with this, and you addressed it at the back end. At 23, there's no question. As a former running back, I would still be super disappointed. 23, I'm just like, I can't do it. It's too rich. I will say at 34, it would be grossly irresponsible to do it. It's like, you get your stimmy, you get the old stimulus check, you're like, ooh, that 70-inch plasma, that'd be nice. I should probably save this for bills, and that'd be the more logical thing to do, the more responsible thing to do. But okay, come on, the 70-inch TV, how wouldn't that be nice in the middle of the living room? You know what I mean? That to me is what Najee Harris or Travis Etienne could be, and even Javonte Williams to a level. Like, to me, though, if they took him at 23, completely disappointed. I'd be like, even not knowing how the board would break, they would have to obviously be passing on some key need for that to be there. 34. I mean, if they did it there, I'd be like, well, we do have a star running back, though. That is fantastic. So that's kind of how I feel about it. Again, I'm kind of in the middle. I would probably be one of the few people going, yeah. Eventually I'd be like, probably. But, I mean, there'd be a little for at least a little fist bump, a little bit of a moment there at 34.
Yeah, it would be like, don't get me wrong. Would it be fun to have Najee Harris or Travis Etienne or Javonte Williams on my football team? Absolutely. Like, those guys are just really, really fun players and really, really good players. But like you said, it's like buying a Porsche, right? And then putting like a Honda Civic engine in it.
Yeah.
It's like sick, right? It's just not going to run as efficient. And you spend all this money and all these resources on this luxury car, and then you put a bad engine in it. And, it would just be, they're not at a point right now as a team currently constructed where running back is like, if they can get a star running back, they're going to the Super Bowl, right? And we've seen it all throughout the NFL, how like it's been repeated over and over and over again. And I'm not one of those people where like running backs don't matter. I think it's a little too much. But the holes that need to be filled on this Jets roster, the players I think that will be there at 23 and 34, it'd be a head scratcher. I'm with you. It's like cool, like we have Najee or we have ETN, like they're going to be really, really fun in this, in this offensive scheme. And then like when you sit down and you're just like, yeah, but we could have had like Tevin Jenkins, or we could have had, Creed Humphrey, or we could have had, guys like on the inside that they actually need and are pressing needs.
All right, I just want to throw the guy out there. So I dropped my 7-round mock draft earlier this week. That's already on the YouTube channel, and the written form is on heavy.com. But I want to throw it at you. This player that I've fallen in love with, and I've known about him for a long time. My dad's a diehard Notre Dame fan, so I've seen like every game of Notre Dame football for like the last 15 years, like not missing a game. And one player that I have seen a lot, and then I've almost fallen back in love with. It's like seeing a high school sweetheart after a little bit of time. I'm like, oh, wait, I remember what we used to have. And that player to me is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And I was so tantalized that I plugged it in the 7-round mock draft, the 23rd overall. And again, there's a lot of needs for this team, so we can argue back and forth about where they go. But he just seems like the perfect Swiss Army knife that Robert Saleh would be drooling and pounding the table for, saying, I'm a head coach. All right, you got your guy with the 2nd overall pick. Give me my guy. Boom, boom, boom. JOK, baby. How would you feel about that? I need another person's take on this player that I've just completely fallen head over heels for, but I don't see enough in Jets draft mock Twitter.
I mean, on the surface, like drafting a linebacker at 23, you're kind of just like, oh, like really? Like you get kind of the Darren Lee flashbacks, but no, JOK, the Jets secret, like I don't think it's being talked about enough. The Jets really are in desperate need of some linebackers. Blake Cashman has been hurt his entire career, from college to the NFL. They signed Davis, but like, okay, that's not really enough. CJ Mosley has played 2 actual quarters of football for the Jets. Like I don't count the New England game because he was like 30%, and it was like he was running in cement out there. Like he just wasn't CJ Mosley. They have a very pressing need for linebacker. And JOK, like you just said, Paul, I mean, he's a Swiss Army knife. He's a type of guy. He's like a Fred Warner. And, I see a lot of comparisons to JOK and Fred Warner and fitting in that solid defense. They need a guy like that in there. I wouldn't be as upset if they took him at 23 as I would if they took a running back. I will say that.
I'm just going to say the CJ Mosley trade stuff is stupid. Now, again, and for a couple things, so you just mentioned it. He hasn't played in 2 years, basically. I mean, he played like a quarter, and we saw the Bills first half, and then that was it. So all in all, it was just a huge tease. But I mean, that's what I don't get. I'm like, it's super thin as is. If you trade CJ Mosley, you're trading him for peanuts. Who's trading? Well, first off, why are you trading CJ Mosley? And number 2, what are you getting for him? The only way it makes any sense for the New York Jets is if you got some sort of massive haul. And guess what? No one's giving up a massive haul for CJ Mosley. So what's a conditional late-round pick when the Jets have the 3rd most cap space in the league right now? They don't need money. So, like, I don't understand any of that. So a lot of people have brought that up, and to me, I think it's just dumb because you're elbow deep. I mean, you've already given him the money. For God's sake, let's just see. Okay, what are the chances he returns to all-pro form? I don't know, but I'd much rather take those chances than trading him for a conditional 6th or whatever garbage offer they'd probably get.
Yeah, it's the thing with him is just like you were saying, like it just doesn't make a lot of sense to just give up on him now because we don't know. Like nobody knows. I don't even think the guys in the building know what CJ Mosley is going to be. And like you said, can we expect him to be like the first half against Buffalo? I think that's a little much. But if he's 75% of that, 80% of that, after just basically saying, I don't want to play for Adam Gase, okay, like that's still a really, really good linebacker and a linebacker who I kind of think fits the solid defense. And you pair him, going back to the question with JOK, like you shored up your linebacker spot right there. Because we've seen the Jets, in Mosley's absence, they get a lot of these just guys in there. They get a lot of Jags in there who are fine players for what they're doing in that Jets defense, but like they're not guys that you want to rely on, right? Like they're fine in a pinch. If a guy needs to take a playoff or is injured for a quarter, you can put him in there, and you're not like the sky is falling. But to have them play an entire season, you're just going to get crucified and you're going to get killed. And we've seen it time and time again with this Jets defense. I mean, Mosley's been the only linebacker that can cover a running back or a tight end since I don't even know. Maybe before I was born. Like you see him constant for as good as David Harris and Bart Scott were in their time here. You put him on a linebacker and it's like, oh God, like it's a question of how long is this pass going to go for, and are they going to be able to stop him before a touchdown? So getting these super athletic linebackers to trade Mosley, look, I get it. If you just don't see him in your future plans, he comes back, he plays well for a couple of weeks, and team's willing to give you a really good pick for him, fine. See ya. Right? Like it's one of those things. But that's a kind of a key piece to this defense. He can come back healthy, he can come back 75, 80% of who he was. That's a really, that's basically just like signing an extra free agent. We talk about it all the time in football about how guys, coming back from an injury, it's basically just like getting a free agent and signing a new guy. So, hopefully, also the other thing too, having him not play for Adam Gase, we don't know how the wonders of that will be. Because I'm fully convinced that he was just like, hey man, like I don't think I'm fully healed for this. I'm not putting my legs on the line for Adam Gase and Greg Williams. That's just not gonna happen. So I think I think I'll be excited. I think, we're all excited, but yeah, the CJ Mosley thing, that's kind of a key piece for this defense.
Again, we're speaking of Greg Armstrong _, where you can follow him on Twitter, part of the TOJ family, Turn On the Jets. That's, of course, where you can find my weekly podcast, The Jet Zone, part of TOJ Digital. And, of course, make sure to check out the Badlands feed as well. Greg, before we get you out of here, the Jets have 10 picks in this 2021 NFL Draft. I've got 2 questions for you. First off, Joe Douglas in his first draft, again, despite being on the job for basically the equivalent of like 22 months, it's only one draft he has under his watch as the Jets GM. In that draft, he made 3 trades. Okay, 2 of them involved a bunch of picks swapping around, and then he also threw a 6th-round flyer at Quincy Wilson. That didn't really work out, but nonetheless, he made 3 trades in last year's draft. First question, over under 2.5 trades for Joe Douglas in this draft?
That's a tough one. I'll say over.
Yeah.
I'll say over. They have because they have a lot of draft picks this year and they have a lot of draft picks next year. But Joe Douglas is a guy, as we've heard for months now, is a guy who wants to build through the draft. And,
right.
If he can pull off, and this was kind of I don't want to say miracle, but a mini miracle of wanting Mims where he was last year, trading back, and still being able to get Mims with assets, that would be huge. But I'm a big fan of that philosophy. Now, I know I'm a big a Belichick guy when it comes to football. Yeah. The process side of it and the theory behind why he does things. And, if you don't like the guys at 34 or in the 3rd round and you don't want it, don't just take a guy just to take a guy. If a team wants somebody that you don't want, why not trade back a couple spots and get more picks? That's just kind of the philosophy I enjoy. And I feel like Douglas is kind of on the same wavelength as that. So I'll go over. Let's get a little excitement on the 2nd and 3rd days.
So you just mentioned this, and this is a fan question I got in the podcast. It was just to what you said, right? So Joe Douglas looks like a gosh darn genius. Okay, he's in the 2nd round. When he trades out, I'm like, what the blank are you doing? Denzel Mims, Chase Claypool, Van Jefferson, what are you doing, man? We need a wide receiver. What are you trading back for? And then I saw him start going off the board. Van Jefferson, Chase, and I'm like, oh, Jesus. He's going to trade back. We're going to miss out on all the top wideouts. And ultimately, right, Denzel Mims on the board, but of course, as Jet fans, just because we chant for him, oh my goodness, you've got to draft this guy. And then they go up to the board and they go, whoever, Kyle Brady. Wait, what the hell? So anything can happen in the draft. It's hard to bring up for any of those painful memories from the past instead of Warren Sapp. But rationalize this with me here, and I haven't talked about this with anyone outside of getting that question on my podcast. Someone asked me, all right, if Joe Douglas misses on that, isn't he a big idiot? So was that like a stroke of genius by Joe Douglas to go, let's trade back, boom, picked up 1 million picks and still got Denzel Mims, who ends up being a really talented player? Or is he just lucky? He traded back with, whoo, can't believe Denzel Mims was there. Great.
It's a little bit. It's got to be a little bit of both, right? I mean, the draft. we were just talking about it earlier. It's a total crapshoot, the entire thing, outside of, maybe the first 3 or 4 picks in any given year. There's some luck involved because a team, you might trade back and a team might jump you and take the guy that you wanted. These guys, you have to have a plan A, B, C, and D when it comes to that kind of stuff. You can't just, trade back. It's like the same thing with, like in the first round, right? Like if you want to trade, what if those guys are gone and you've already traded up, right? It's just one of those things where you kind of got to hope and pray that your guy's there. But, that's why these guys have these jobs, right? It's easy for you and I to be like, hey, you should have taken this guy or
Monday morning quarterback, baby.
Yeah, exactly, right? We're sitting here, on our couches being like, why didn't they take this guy? Like, he's still on the board. Why don't they take him? Like, these guys have their jobs for a reason, and they're way more plugged into what's going on than we are. So you'd hope that if you're trading back from a spot like that, similar to what happened in the Mims trade last year, you kind of have a really good read on how the board is going to break. And obviously, wild things happen, right? So you can't really prepare for everything, but there's definitely luck that's involved. But there's also a lot of, okay, we kind of have a good feeling or a good inkling of how the next 6-7 picks are going to go, and we still think we can get this guy. So let's just trade back and let's recoup some resources on that one.
And I'll just lean towards the latter. I'll give Joe Douglas all the credit in the world from what you just said. Maybe he just knew how the border was going to break, or maybe he's just a lucky son of a gun. Either way, Denzel Mims is a New York Jet, and I'm excited to see him with a competent offensive mind of some sort. Last one before we get you out of here, Greg. Again, the Jets have 10 picks in this class. Who are some Greg Armstrong guys? Guys that you're like, if they end up being, I don't care if it's first round, second round, 7th round, 30th round. There is no 30th round, but I don't care. Whatever round it is, are Greg Armstrong guys, if they end up being New York Jets after this weekend, you're going to do a silent fist bump going, yeah, that's my boy, and I feel very good about him. Who are some guys that Jet fans that are watching this right now that while the draft happens, when that guy gets selected, they're like, oh, that's a Greg Armstrong guy. Nice. He's going to be pretty good.
The guy at the top of my list is Trey Smith from Tennessee, the interior offensive lineman. Connor actually put the bug in my ear a couple of years ago about him. And you want to pair a dude with Becton on that side, like those two are just maulers. Like Trey Smith is a nasty guy. He would be really good on the interior, I think. The medicals are a little bit scary. I know he did have blood clots, so that might scare teams away. I don't know as the time we're recording this if those are all cleared up and everything's good with that. But Trey Smith is a guy that I've wanted on. I think I've tried to mock him in every mock draft I've done to the Jets at some point for the past 2 years. So he's definitely a guy. Michael Carter, the running back from North Carolina. He's a guy that I did a really deep dive on for the draft. I love it. He's got a small window to hit. He's a tiny guy, but he's a tough guy, and he's a guy that when he gets to second level, he's kind of got his route kind of planned out when he gets there. He's very good at creating angles and making guys miss in the open field in the second level. Ramondre Stevenson is another guy. He kind of reminds me of LeGarrette Blount. I think Connor put that as his comparison in there. Him and Trey Sermon both remind me of LeGarrette Blount. But Stevenson, I will say this for the guy, he was probably the most fun I've had watching a player. He's got really soft feet. He's a power back, but he's a lot quicker than he looks for his size. I don't think he really fits this Jets scheme all that great, but in the later rounds, if they took a flyer on him, I'd be ecstatic about it. Either of the two guys from Tulane, Patrick Johnson and Cam Sample, those are just dudes, right? And this Jets team hasn't had a lot of those type of guys in the past couple of years. Cam Sample, I don't think he'll give you the stats, and I don't think he'll give you the numbers, but that's a dude who does not give up an inch on the field. And I don't know if, when we were watching him, he may not win all the time, but he doesn't get beat on his reps. And he'll die trying before you beat him on a rep. And the same thing with Patrick Johnson. I mean, that dude's just going 150 miles an hour on every single play. You see him on his backside pursuit. You see him, setting up guys as an edge rusher. They're just two really, really fun guys to watch. And I'll give you another guy. I know he's kind of rising up now. Your guy, Melifonwu from Syracuse. That's one that, the more you watch of him, the more excited you get about maybe getting him in the second or third round at corner for a need that they desperately need, a position they desperately need. He's a guy that, you know, if they draft him in the third, you're excited, and I think he just quietly has a really, really good career if he stays here. But yeah, those are probably the guys where I'm like, if they draft any of them, I'm like, let's go. Trey Smith, I'm telling you, man, if Trey Smith is in a Jets jersey, I might just throw a party. It might just be myself and my dog, but like I've been pounding the table as much as possible to anyone who will listen. I'll just go out in the public and just scream like, hey man, just talk to some random guy in the street like, hey man, would love the Jets to get Trey Smith, huh? Really fun guy, huh? He's just one of those guys where I'm just like ecstatic and I just want to yell at people. People don't even watch football. Just be like, hey, I love Trey Smith.
Yeah, all right. He's like, who? But the thing is like on Trey Smith, and I'll be honest, at the beginning of the process, like even before this past college football year, may have been 2 years ago, I'm like, Trey Smith, baby, that's who I want. And then just kind of quieted. I just haven't heard as much Trey Smith. So I hope, obviously I hope the medical is perfectly okay for Trey Smith to have the wonderful NFL career he deserves. And clearly, if you watch the tape, is clearly capable of. But selfishly, I hope, boy, blood clots, looks pretty tough. Slides down the draft board. Selfishly jump on that a little bit later. And two things to what you just said. First off, I love that every Jets fan has just associated me and Syracuse together. So, like, I get tweets all the time. That's Paul's boy. I fought you, Melifano. I'm like, yes, it is. Yes, you bet it is. Or Andre Sisco or Troy Williams. Anytime. Like, it's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's Instagram. And it's just some random Jets fan. Someone mentions I fought you. Yeah, that's Paul's guy. Yeah. He's going to get a Jets guy. Yeah, that's it. And I'm like, phenomenal. So continue, for fans out there that are watching, continue to tag me. I love it. Mention me as many times with the Syracuse guys as possible. And also, here's the good news, bad news. So I fought you. I watched his entire career here at Syracuse. My day job as a sports talk radio host and getting to cover Syracuse football is amazing. So I got to see all these guys, which is awesome. It gives me great insight for some of these Syracuse guys. The thing I'll tell you is I feel like Ifeatu Melifonwu was like kind of going under the radar, and then you had the Senior Bowl love and everything else. And I'm great friends with Jim Nagy, and he's fantastic. And unfortunately, it's great for Ifeatu trying to make as much money as possible. Sam Monson of Pro Football Focus, I've had him on my show before. He tweeted out like dark horse first round candidates, put Ifeatu Melifonwu. I'm like, shh. Come on, Sam. But also, Melifonwu, yeah, draft stock. So he could be. I mean, it may be crazy, but I could see him going back into round one because of just all the things that you see. Again, everyone has imperfections in their game, but the length, the NFL genes, his brother Obi was a freak at the combine a bunch of years ago. Like everything I see, I could see a team going, yeah, I'll throw a dart at the end of the first round and cornerback the position in general. So I could see it. But also on the other side, I could definitely see him slipping to, and 66, I'm just praying doing a rain dance and somehow he's there. He should not be there under any circumstance. But if he's there, I will run from my house in Oswego, New York to Cleveland. I don't know how long that takes. I should probably Waze that, try to see what the mileage is, but I will run that pick to the podium. I probably won't have enough time. What's it on day two, maybe 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. I will sprint, dead sprint, get as far as I can. And if I can't make it, I'll call Joe and say, just get the pick in for me, running out of breath. Because that, to me, scheme fit, player I love, player I've got, that would be chef's kiss. So same thing with Trey. Hey, maybe this could happen. Maybe the Jets can get Zach Wilson, of course, franchise quarterback. Grab your boy Trey Smith. Grab my guy Ifeatu Melifonwu. Put on the gear and let's go to war. And then we've just obviously popped the bubbly. We've celebrated like nothing before.
Listen, man, you know what's gonna happen, right? He's gonna go 65.
Yeah, if that happens, I mean, to be honest, it's happened so many times before in history. Like, I'm like, Nick Martin, I can't wait for him. Jets go Christian Hackenberg, and he goes one pick ahead. I'm like, are you friggin' kidding me here? So it's happened throughout history of just getting sniped like a fantasy draft. I'm like hovering over it, ready to draft. Boop, just drafted. Come on. So it's like just like that for the draft. So that's probably 100% what's going to happen. Like Elijah Vera Tucker, 22, boop, off the board. First off, if he's there at 22, the Jets better do everything in their power to trade up for AVT, by the way. And I know that's a very popular beat a dead horse kind of take, but again, AVT is another guy as well. But Greg, we could bash this all day long. I am so ready for this NFL draft. We're talking about it before we jumped on. We're ready for it to be here. We're releasing this immediately. So we're recording this here on a Tuesday night. We're going to release it immediately so people can enjoy it and bask in. This is the Jets NFL Draft Edition here on the YouTube show. And Greg, thank you so much for taking the time, man. A lot of fun.
Yeah, man, Paul. It's always a pleasure to join my fellow Central New York brethren and talk Jets football, especially this time. Hopefully we have more where we're actually talking about actual wins in October, November, December, January, maybe even February. Hopefully then.
And I'm going to be honest. That's all well good. I just love talking about good football week 2. Week 2, not week 1. Nah, boy, time to tank, guys. Time to tank. It's week 2. What are we doing?
Second quarter of week 1.
Let's lose every game as possible. What the hell? So that's what I would like. Yeah.
The bar is set at let's just have a good opening drive. Let's just move the ball down the field.
Yeah. That's it. So some Zach Wilson touchdowns and some exciting Mike LaFleur competent offense. All of this is just possible, and that is exciting. Greg, enjoy the draft, man. I'm sure we'll be texting and talking it up during the whole thing. As soon as Trey Smith dons that Jets jersey, slaps on the Jets hat, we'll be going crazy. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me, Paul.